Hey guys, and welcome to another Top 10. Today, we're going to be discussing the Grass type and the Pokemon in it I deem as underrated. The Grass type. In terms of balance, there is no balance. I wish I was joking, but sadly, I'm not. Despite a decent bit of Grass types being more relegated to defensive roles with defensive moves, a solo Grass type has 5 weaknesses. Go ahead and try to be bulky when U-turn is incredibly common. Ice is one of the best offensive typings in the game, and poison types are always going to be on fairy killing duty due to how good fairies tend to be. Also, your stab is resisted by steel, which is one of the most common defensive types. Yikes. They really did give all the love to fire and water. Actually, that's a lie. With the amount of water types, that's where the love goes. Try getting a fire type that isn't your starter anywhere before Gen 5, where they had to hand one out to you if you chose Oshawott. As per usual, here are the rules for this list. 1. This Pokemon isn't seen in a competitive match very much. Either there are more popular options, or the Pokemon just hasn't found its niche yet, assuming it could have one at all. 2. This Pokemon does not have as much of a following as other Pokemon of their type. They just aren't as popular, even though they probably could be if people realize their merits. 3. Because all lists are subjective and personal opinion, they have to be Pokemon I deem to, simply put, just don't see at all. Not in competition, not as a design, not even in casual Pokemon chat. People simply just don't talk about it enough. And one last mini rule. There are going to be Pokemon I personally see fit to ban from the list, and these Pokemon are Shiftry and Cacturne. For those who haven't watched the Dark type video, they are already placed there. I don't want to retreat old ground, so I'll simply be prohibiting them from this video. I hope you understand. And as usual, Mystic Reads, Shorts, and the typing with the most upvotes will be the one we cover next, so leave what typing you want to see in the comment section below. With that though, let's begin the list. Starting off the list, we have Appleton. I find Appleton to be a rather fascinating Pokemon, at least lore-wise. It's said that it only feeds on 2 things, mainly sweet apples and small bug Pokemon that happen to be attracted to its sweet nectar. So this Pokemon seems to turn the type matchup on its head because despite the fact that Bug is super effective against Grass, it had no issues risking getting hit by a base 80 power stab super effective Leech Life from a hungry Spinarak. Any Pokemon that can just ignore the type chart and live their life without it is an inspiration in my eyes. Its typing is also incredibly interesting too, with Grass Dragon being a rather unique typing among it, Flapple, and Mega Sceptile. Apple Acid is pretty cool too. Always lowering special defense when it hits gives it a snowball effect, and snowballs don't do as much damage to it thanks to Thick Fat, although it's still gonna hurt with the quad weakness. The issue it has, and what makes people turn away from it, is its harder to use nature. Its defenses and special attack are alright, but the weaknesses to U-turn and Moonblast are not doing it much favors, and both those moves are pretty common. Unfortunately, so is Steel. And Steel resists its stabs, and its coverage for Steel is relegated to Earthquake and Body Press. The former being a physical attack, despite Appleton wanting to be a bulky special attacker. And Body Press isn't really the best option coming off of base 80 defense. Why didn't they give it Earth Power? Beats me. But this hard to use nature, and the lack of instantaneous damage that Flapple's hustle boosted physical attacks have, makes people lean more towards it. But that doesn't mean Appleton isn't good. It just means that competition for the team slot is stiff. But hey, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And I think it's worth using just for that. Just ignore the doctors and Pokemon that are like Blissey, who has a very high special defense stat. So this Pokemon is the embodiment of don't go towards the light, because the light will be the last thing that you ever see. Shanatic is an absolute menace to society. Entering forests where it lives at night are treacherous escapades, as those who are confused by its lights will never find their way home. You'll fall into a slumber, never to wake up as it absorbs your life energy. Really takes the move Strength Sap to a whole new level. Yeah, the lore behind this thing is pretty dark for a fairy type. The nicest thing about this mushroom monster is that if one of its fellow mushroom monsters are weakened, they'll lend energy to it. That's right, Shanatic is an absolute fiend. Competitively, it isn't the best, but it does have merit. The dragon immunity is nice thanks to its fairy typing, and it does get access to the good grass moves. You know the ones. Sap Sipper, Synthesis, Giga Drain, Leech Seed, and even Spore. Moonblast Stab is also really nice. However, what stops people from using it in a fight is that Fairy and Grass are not good complementary types outside of the niche of Dragon Slaying. There are added resistances, but lethal weaknesses stacked on top of it. There's a niche for it, but sadly, most people who use Spore Mushrooms with good special defense, and a bait and switch type of Pokedex entry, will just use Amoonguss. But at least it fights Parasect for territory, and anyone willing to help with the Parasect extermination is always an ally, especially for how bothersome they are in Legends Arceus playthroughs. Speaking of Pokemon that seem too similar to other Pokemon, can we just take a second to talk about Elvigos? At first glance, I thought it was a Galarian Roselia, but it turned out to be its own Pokemon, which is admittedly better than any variant in my eyes. But the similarities are still there, and I can't unsee it. Every time I view Elvigos, I see Roselia. Now, with that said, Elvigos is a perfectly valid Pokemon in its own right. It has Regenerator, it has Leech Seed, the Powder Moves, Aromatherapy, Synthesis, Giga Drain, and even Rapid Spin. The only other Pokemon in the entire game with Regenerator and Rapid Spin is Cyclizar. In terms of bulk, 60 HP, 90 defense, and 120 special defense are nothing to scoff at, with a somewhat alright base 80 attack. So it's neat at least in the lower tiers. What makes it better is the pure grass typing. You know, 5 weaknesses, gets resisted by steel, all that jazz. This, and weirdly, it doesn't do enough? Yeah, it's got good moves, but other than Rapid Spin, nothing sets it apart from its competition. And while its bulk is good on paper, so is Avalug's. But we know how that went with that typing. The Hand of Fate was cruel to it. But hey, at least this Pokedex entry is neat. The seeds attached to its cotton fluff are full of nutrients. It spreads them on the wind so that plants and other Pokemon can benefit from them. It may not be the best battler, but it doesn't need to be. It's a good friend. Zarude feels like one of those Pokemon that is kind of forgotten. I don't know, I never see any real hype over Zarude the same way I've seen over other mythicals. It has a really unique signature move that is basically just aromatherapy, but with healing attached to it in the form of jungle healing. And it has an overall excellent stat pool. In fact, in Gen 8, it was so good in UU that it forced Celebi to RU because it was just seen as better Celebi in the competitive scene. I call it forgotten because outside of Gen 8 UU, where it was good, I don't ever hear anything from the Zarude fans. Where are all of you? Although, according to Pokemon Sword, within dense forests, this Pokemon lives in a pack with others of its kind. It's incredibly aggressive and the other Pokemon of the forest fear it. So that means this thing isn't really all too mythical if there are whole packs of them. Well, anyways, back to why it's underrated rather than poking the specifics. I guess what makes Zarude underrated is admittedly the fact that while it has great stats and admittedly a really cool design, I think this Pokemon was poorly advertised. I mean, I didn't know that Pokemon Secrets of the Jungle existed until I did my research on grass types. The event for it was incredibly generic, and in comparison to the mythicals of other gems, it doesn't really stand out. Zarude is cool, but it kind of passes as a regular Pokemon to me. Diancie, Hoopa, Volcanion, and Zeraora don't give that same vibe. At least this is my opinion, and why I don't think it gets the love it deserves. It also doesn't help that in terms of competitive Pokemon, while it has a great offensive typing and an excellent move pool, there is a different Primate with a similar type that tends to be easier to use with a better ability than Leaf Guard and a higher attack stat that can just get away with clicking buttons. Rillaboom's Grassy Surge and Grassy Glide combo just hits, and Zarude doesn't have that going for it. Speaking of Leaf Guard, why? Preventing status in the sun as a grass type doesn't matter when you're opening yourself up to lose to a Fire Blast, and jungle healing heals status anyways, along with HP. It's kind of baffling. You know what's incredibly unfortunate? Being created in the same generation with a starter who shares your type. And boy, do we have a few of those on this list. Foreshadowing! The first one I want to talk about, though, is Vileplume. The unfortunate thing about being a grass poison type in Gen 1 is that you aren't Venusaur. Sure, between the two, Venusaur used to be better defensively, and Vileplume with Chlorophyll was more offensive, thus giving Vileplume its own unique game plan. However, Generation 5 then gave Venusaur Chlorophyll, and then suddenly Venusaur just became better in every way. Ignore that it also was then given a Mega Evolution, access to even better coverage with Weather Ball later on, a back massage, and a box lunch for simply existing. Talk about knowing that you aren't the favorite. Holy crap. However, despite the existence of Venusaur, Vileplume is still awesome. It has access to tools Venusaur does not, namely Moonblast and Strength Sap. Sure, it also has Moonlight, but that works too similarly to Synthesis for it to count, at least in my eyes. Moonblast can also catch a Dragon type off guard with Vileplume's 110 special attack. This special attack, by the way, is 10 points higher than Venusaur's, so take that, even though Venusaur is one of my favorite Pokemon. Strength Sap being able to actively lower the attack of a powerful Pokemon while recovering its HP also gives it defensive utility that Venusaur does not have access to. And let me just say, oh, how the tables have turned. Do I sound like I'm reveling in this? Well, I am. We support the underdogs in this house. And speaking of grass and poison underdogs and not being Venusaur, we have a spot that is arguably interchangeable with the last one. But in my opinion, Vileplume's counterpart has it a bit harder, and Game Freak has given it less love. At least Vileplume got to be on Ariana's team as a race. Victory Bell has been given no such treatment. While Venusaur and Vileplume get access to Solar Beam in the sun, Game Freak was cruel enough to not give Victory Bell Solar Blade. That's just cruel, given its 105 physical attack stat being its higher attacking stat. Now, sure, with base 100 special attack, a mixed set is there. It gets Weather Ball at least, unlike Vileplume, so it can melt steel types in the sun with pretty moderate ease. Solar Beam or Power Whip, Knockoff, Sucker Punch, Poison Jab, and either Swords Dance or Growth give it some pretty nice options. The issue with it, in comparison to its other grass poison competition, is that it's harder to get in due to its lower defenses, and it doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as consistently. Yeah, it's slightly faster, but that doesn't really save it. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not worse per se, just harder to use. Having Physical Poison and Grass Stab along with Sucker Punch and Weather Ball as a special option gives you the tools you need to win games. Those tools are just harder to use. Yet another grass type with the same type combo as a starter introduced in the same generation. I'm gonna be real with you, I love Delmice. It's such a cool design, and I love that the anchor isn't the Pokemon, but the green seaweed is. Funny thing, according to the Ultra Moon Pokedex, it can expand for hundreds of yards. That by itself makes it menacing, but it also can take down Wailord in a single hit. And it gets along very well with Skrelp. And Skrelp, funny enough, Skrelp blends in with Seaweed and likes to cling to Delmice. I love when the Pokedex does this. It makes the world feel alive. Probably one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 7 in all honesty. And competitively? I mean, it's okay in the lower tiers. Steelworker giving it essentially a third typing with no drawbacks is basically Terrastalize before there was Terrastalize. And with Terrastalize, you can just Terra Steel anyways and have super steel moves. I mean, hit the meanest Gyro Ball you want. The Ghost typing does work in its favor though, because it is a rapid spin blocker that can also rapid spin. It also happens to have one of my favorite silly moves in the game, Steel Roller, which has base 130 power. If there's no terrain active, it doesn't work, but it ends the terrain when it hits. It's not a good move, but if you're playing in draft and you see your opponent is on Indeedee, well, you know what to do. Oh, and Poltergeist, Power Whip, Anchor Shot, and Knockoff are great offensive options too, especially coming off a base 131 attack stat. Its moderate bulk lets it slot in Synthesis or Pain Split to good effect too. I love Cherum. This is probably one of my favorite Pokemon from Generation 4. Yeah, even in the generation that gave us all the neat new evolutions, a really cool pair of starters, and one of the coolest regional birds in Staraptor, I have a soft spot for Cherum. Look, it's not meant for singles. Its ability and move pool are all dedicated to doubles. Helping Hand and Flower Gift make a mean combination next to any potent physical attacker in the sun. I remember VGC formats where legendaries were allowed, and watching this adorable blossoming flower top alongside Groudon due to sun naturally being up and Flower Gift granting Groudon an increase in its already high attack while giving it newfound special bulk. And then, with Helping Hand, Precipice Blades got jacked up to even higher degrees of power. With Drought up, the only weaknesses Groudon had were Ice and Grass, although Water still hurt, and Grass happens to beat Water. So, for Grass and Ice, Fire Punch and Lava Plume helped the issue, and Cherum's Weather Ball made the issue feel even more like a minor inconvenience. It was a perfect pairing, a match made in heaven. A little cherry blossom and the deity that controls the freaking land. And I look back on it pretty fondly, not gonna lie. But with that, I'll stop gushing about it. While most people I talk to about Pokemon play singles, and thus this little friend-shaped buddy pal is gonna get looked over because it's bad. That shouldn't stop one from taking a moment to look at Cherum and realize that maybe being good or bad doesn't matter when you're one of the most adorable Pokemon ever created. Remember when I talked about being a Pokemon with the same exact typing as a starter and how unfortunate that is? Well, here's our final example, I promise. But I love Bellossom with all my heart anyways. Sure, it's a mono grass just like the adorable and precious Meganium, but weirdly, that's not who one would compare it to that would make it underrated. No. Its whole existence has been spent in the shadow of its older sibling, Vileplume, who is already on this list. It's adorable, it's small, and I feel like I could just pick it up and give it a hug. I mean, look at it. Not to mention it has a rather humorous Pokedex entry from Pokemon Sapphire. A Bellossom grows more flowers beautifully if it is evolved from a smelly Gloom. The stinkier, the better. At night, this Pokemon closes its petals and goes to sleep. Also, Pokemon 2000, when the Blossom did the little dance, still gets me every time. I think the idea that having a bad-smelling Gloom that becomes a great-smelling Blossom is humorous, just due to the fact that it's unexpected. Now, just like some of the other Pokemon on this list, it has Chlorophyll. But while the Pokedex entry may tell you that it needs the sunlight to start dancing, this is not applicable in a battle. Blossom can start dancing in any weather thanks to being one of the few Pokemon blessed with Quiver Dance. Sure, base 90 special attack is okay at best, and base 50 speed makes it sadly slower than Frostmoth. It can compensate for this. It has an easier time getting Quiver Dance going thanks to the power of Strength Sap healing it and lowering the opposing attack. Buffing special defense and lowering physical attack? Now, that's a sweeping combination I can get behind. Blossom, keep on dancing like there's no tomorrow, please. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are probably some of my favorite Pokemon games to date. Sure, they have issues with the frame rate and running at times, but the designs are bangers, the region is great, the story's pretty good, especially every scene with Arven, and also they brought back Deerling and Sawsbuck's weather variations in a way that makes them just pretty easy to obtain. Just go find them in the correct area, and the form will correlate. I also learned that the saws in Sawsbucks are actually the seasons: spring, autumn, winter, and summer. It's also the original normal and grass type, and despite its stabs being walled by steel, it will just use Jump Kick. Sure, it's a Chlorophyll Pokemon, and that's neat, but you don't have to run Chlorophyll on it. Sap Sipper is a great way to switch into something trying to use Spore, and then gaining further attacking excellence. Or you can run Serene Grace. Base 100 attack and 95 speed, while not perfect, give it all the tools it needs to be a somewhat decent Choice Scarfer. What does that have to do with Serene Grace, you may ask? Headbutt. 30% chance? Doubled? 60%. Hornleech also gives it recovery, and Jump Kick beats Steel types up. So you have a solid roster of moves at your disposal just off of that, and the ability to be very annoying by spamming Headbutt if the opponent forgot to pack a Ghost type. What a good Pokemon that sadly doesn't see enough usage, despite the fact that it's one of the most unique and interesting designs as a whole. but it wouldn't be underrated if it got the love it deserved, would it? And that's it for my top 10 underrated grass types. What'd you think? Did I miss a Pokemon? What's your personal list? What type do you want to see me go over next? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go outside, get some sunlight, touch some grass, and double my speed. Talking about chlorophyll seems to have messed me up. I'm gonna have to go see a Blissey now. Also, for those of you guys that stuck around to the end, yes, I am aware of Plume and Alpharad. If you made it this far on the video, type #Plume. I know the majority of people probably haven't, but I just want to see how many people are going to comment about it. I still consider it underrated though, because even with that, Plume still needs more love. Carly Bills. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching my content. With Scarlet and Violet DLC on the way, we have a lot to be excited for. Not just that though, but I've got a bunch of other cool series planned throughout the year that I'm sure you guys will love. If you want to support my other forms of content, over on Mystic Reads, I read fanfics. One of them right now is Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto Edition, where Ash and Serena start from the very beginning and journey through Kanto together. On Mystic Umbreon Shorts, I do other exclusive Pokemon content such as Pokemon Facts, and on Saturdays, I upload my top 5 favorite Pokemon of a type. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day. Really, the seasons: spring, autumn, winter, and summer. It's also the original normal and grass type, and despite its stabs being walled by steel, it will just use Jump Kick. Sure, it's a chlorophyll Pokemon, and that's neat, but you don't have to run chlorophyll on it. Sap Sipper is a great way to switch into something trying to use Spore, and then gaining further attacking excellence. Or you can run Serene Grace. Base 100 attack and 95 speed, while not perfect, give it all the tools it needs to be a somewhat decent choice scarfer. What does that have to do with Serene Grace, you may ask? Headbutt. 30% chance? Doubled? 60%. Hornleech also gives it recovery, and Jump Kick beats Steel types up. So you have a solid roster of moves at your disposal just off of that, and the ability to be very annoying by spamming Headbutt if the opponent forgot to pack a Ghost type. What a good Pokemon that sadly doesn't see enough usage, despite the fact that it's one of the most unique and interesting designs as a whole. But it wouldn't be underrated if it got the love it deserved, would it? And that's it for my top 10 underrated grass types. What'd you think? Did I miss a Pokemon? What's your personal list? What type do you want to see me go over next? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go outside, get some sunlight, touch some grass, and double my speed. Talking about chlorophyll seems to have messed me up. I'm gonna have to go see a Blissey now. Also, for those of you guys that stuck around to the end, yes, I am aware of Plume and Alpharad. If you made it this far on the video, type #Plume. I know the majority of people probably haven't, but I just want to see how many people are going to comment about it. I still consider it underrated though, because even with that, Plume still needs more love. Carly Bills. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching my content. With Scarlet and Violet DLC on the way, we have a lot to be excited for. Not just that though, but I've got a bunch of other cool series planned throughout the year that I'm sure you guys will love. If you want to support my other forms of content, over on Mystic Reads, I read fanfics. One of them right now is Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto Edition, where Ash and Serena start from the very beginning and journey through Kanto together. On Mystic Umbreon Shorts, I do other exclusive Pokemon content such as Pokemon Facts, and on Saturdays, I upload my top 5 favorite Pokemon of a type. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day.